Let's welcome Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Barrister Adegboruwa, who joins us virtually from Lagos. Good morning, Senior Advocate. Thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Let's first of all set the tone of, how this may have impacted the people of Rivers State psychologically in the last 6 months, and how they may be viewing their governor as he returns to office now, before we begin to explore the other legal lessons.
You know, this is an unfortunate development, and it looks and brings us back to those dark days of military regime when democracy then take over and people are rejoicing, because in the circumstances in the Rivers State, you had a military administrator who was in charge for 6 months. And then there's a broadcast asking the governor, the deputy, and the legislators to resume. It's actually like a transition from military rule to civilian rule. And that's why I thought that there ought not to be any form of celebration, as it were. We should watch this with guided optimism, given the fact that the circumstances that led to this declaration of state of emergency have not abated. And it will be good for the people of Rivers, though I'm happy for them, especially that in the past 6 months, they've maintained peace, they've maintained tolerance, and they cooperated with the sole administrator to be able to achieve his assignments and also endure that moment until the restoration of democracy in the midnight of today. So to me, I see it as an aberration and something that ought not to happen at all, given our democratic experience from 1962, when we had this kind of scenario when the government of Tafawa Balewa had to also wield the big stick in appointing a sole administrator for the Western region then. So politicians, leaders should learn from history to continue to use those experiences collectively to charter a way forward in deepening our democracy and also to ensure that we play by the rules. So for me, it's good that it has ended. There was no way the president could have extended the state of emergency in any way. But it's good that democracy is back in Rivers State. The governor is back. The legislators are back. So we expect that they should work together and cover the lapses and there'll be progress for Rivers State. But I do not have any cause for celebration in any way at all, Ma.
And speaking of historical precedent, it appears an inexhaustible conversation right from the beginning in March when the president declared a state of emergency. There have been references to 1962, to the declaration of his state of emergency under former President Obasanjo and former President Goodluck Jonathan. What would it be for you on the debate about the appropriate or inappropriate invocation of Section 305 of the 1999 Constitution, particularly with regards to the suit instituted by PDP governors that particularly never went anywhere, and we now have a return to democratic institution?
I think those are the things that Nigerians expect as part of the lessons of the Rivers State experience. The various cases filed, the president referred to them as almost about 40 in the various courts, should go on and be determined. Once there were declarations sought in those suits, the court should pronounce on the legality or otherwise of the actions so that they can guide us and become useful precedent when this situation may present itself in future. I do not agree that those suits are academic or that they have been overtaken by events. The court should proceed to determine the declaration sought to guide our actions in future. Because the reason why we have the judiciary is that when parties have disputes between government, between individuals, there must be some definitive pronouncement from the third arm of government, being the judiciary, that will guide all combatants in order to achieve peace and stability. So I expect that the Supreme Court will proceed to determine that suit filed by the PDP governors and the other suits that are filed at the Federal High Court by various interest groups, SERAP, people from Rivers, human rights organizations and civil society organizations and political parties. Those cases should be determined so that it will be important for us to know. Because Section 305 has become a controversial section inserted in the Constitution, and especially in terms of the powers granted to the president, whether when there is need to declare a state of emergency, the consequential powers to be exercised by the president must be stated definitely. Because, you know, if people exercise their mandate to elect others into office, such as they did to Governor Siminalayi Fubara and all the members of the House of Assembly, it's a sacred mandate that should be preserved at all costs. So if there's a reason for a single individual, such as the president, with all due respect, to interfere with that mandate, the circumstances should be spelled out within the Constitution, whether it will be extended to removing those that were elected by the people. And I think that's the area of the controversy, whether the president should have sacked the governor, whether he should have suspended, as it were, all elected democratic officers of River State in the course of this crisis. Those are matters that the court must determine one way or the other. And I think it's one of the lessons we should take from this exercise. Then additionally, is that based on Section 305, those that have exercised oversight functions over this state of emergency period, the president, the Federal Executive Council, the National Assembly, should render a report to the people of Nigeria. I mean, Rivers is one of the richest states in Nigeria. There are resources there. Somebody acted for 6 months as a single individual. What is his report? What did he do with the resources? I mean, what is the state of the handover? Those matters should become transparent to guide us. You know, how did he manage the resources of River State? What were the decisions that he took? What did he leave behind? You know, those matters.
Yeah, go ahead, sir.
And they should be.
Go ahead, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Adegboruwa, you can conclude your thoughts.
Okay, yes, sorry, but I thought that there was something. So I was saying, with all due respect, that Nigerians are entitled to know from the president who was exercising oversight responsibilities over the sole administrator, from the National Assembly, in terms of accountability and transparency, how much was received during this period and what was it used for? What were the powers and the nature of those powers exercised by the sole administrator? I mean, you saw that there were protests in Rivers State. Retirees are claiming not to have been paid. The sole administrator himself said he saved 5 billion. I mean, so you can't just be talking to people extraneously. There must be facts. How much did he receive? And then how was it expended? So I expect that those should be part of the lessons that we can take from this exercise to know that indeed there was prudent management of that tenure on behalf of the people of Rivers State.
Speaking of lessons, just before I yield the floor to my colleagues, you have expressed a maverick point of view there, saying that the courts should go ahead to determine the interpretation of Section 305, all the suits. But Ms. Adegboruwa, I'm going to ask you pointedly. Some have said the judiciary, particularly under this current administration, is more political than legal. So can we rely upon the judiciary, if those suits go ahead, to give an appropriate interpretation of Section 305 of the Constitution?
I think that this is a matter of perception, and perception also determines reality. So it's important that, the judiciary must be seen, to be doing justice on all occasions. But like I maintain always, Bukola, when this matter comes up for discussion, with all humility, past 30 years or more that I have been going in and out of the courts, I'll probably speak from my own personal experience that I cannot say wholeheartedly that the judiciary is political, the judiciary is biased, the judiciary is corrupt. So that's why I say it's a matter of perception, because I go in and out of these courts and I handle political cases, I handle all manner of cases. I have not had the opportunity that will lead me to those conclusions to say that, indeed, the negative. But the perception of the public, in terms of how these cases are managed, is important. For instance, the cases filed in the Supreme Court, I thought that because of the nature of the tenure granted to the sole administrator, 6 months, those cases should have been accelerated and determined one way or the other so that parties will know their fate. But that is not to say that, the failure to determine them then will mean that the judiciary is apolitical or indeed biased one way or the other. But I think, like I said, perception is important, because indeed, when disputes arise between one person or the other, between one function of government or the other, everybody is expecting the judiciary to give a definitive pronouncement that will guide people so that nobody will have excuse to take the laws into his hands or act beyond the powers granted by the Constitution. So judiciary should interpret the law at all times that will guide human conduct and the actions of those who are in power. So to that extent, maybe one way or the other, the expectations may not have been met in terms of the expeditious determination of those cases. But I think that can be remedied now with the suggestion I gave earlier, that in order not to be seen as if those cases were deliberately delayed and frustrated, the judiciary should go ahead to determine them based on the declarations sought and give pronouncements and give interpretation as to the nature of power to be exercised by the president if there is any need to declare a state of emergency, which I hope will never happen in the history of this country again.
Well, Senior Advocate, so it's really tough to envision what to expect in terms of governance in Rivers State from today now. A lot of people have said the governor will be returning, which is still talked. He's been clipped, his wings have been clipped. Does that mean he will be taking approval or seeking the approval of someone before he makes a decision as a governor and all of that? So it's really tough to envision what governance would look like. So for those who are on the flip side saying the end has justified the means, at least there is peace, so the president's decision is justified, what do you have to say to them? Also, for other states, because I read the last major paragraph of the president's statement where he said that this should be a lesson to other states. So it will seem as though the president has unlocked a new power in the Constitution where he can just suspend any governor democratically elected, the deputy, and the members of the assembly. So what does this mean also for our federation?
Thank you very much. Honestly, I think that this moment should be one of sober reflection for the combatants in Rivers State, starting from His Excellency, the Executive Governor, the Honorable Speaker of the House of Assembly, and all the elected representatives. Because this was not a fight of the people of Rivers State. Not at all. It was a fight between political gladiators. The people of Rivers State were not involved in this crisis. in any way at all. And people should have that in mind, that democracy is all about the people. This was just a matter of settling political scores between people who fell out between themselves. That's why I said it's a moment of sober reflection, because look at the governor, for instance. He's come back like an orphan. Yeah, I mean, in normal democratic settings, Rivers State should have been the best example for political stability, because you would have a state that you will really expect proper independence of powers, separation of powers, checks and balances. The expectation was for the House of Assembly to moderate the excesses of the executive, but not to do so overbearingly. The expectation was also that the judiciary will also act to put them. I mean, look at the National Assembly under Senator Bukola Saraki and Honorable Dogara. I mean, that was the example everybody expected in Rivers State, that the National Assembly will serve as a moderating institution to curtail the excesses of the executive, but not to fight, not to quarrel, not to seek to undermine each other. Because at the end of the day, it is the grass that is suffering. The people of Rivers State, they are the ones suffering. So coming back to power now, the governor should realize the need for tolerance. As an executive leader in a state, you can't work alone. I mean, presenting budget to 3 people. The House of Assembly should understand the nature and limit of their powers. You are legislators. You cannot take over the role of the executive. You have to make law. No matter how powerful your office is as a speaker, the Constitution is clear in Section 4 that the legislator exists purely for lawmaking. So a situation whereby you seek to twist that function to take over the role of the executive, it will be resisted. And which was why I said I will take all this development with guided optimism, because the factors leading to the declaration of state of emergency have not abated. I mean, the governor is in power. Elections were conducted in his absence. Local government chairmen have now emerged. Probably none of them has his loyalty or has his backing. So it's like somebody just floating. And that floating mechanism should be maintained in such a way that it will lead to a robust democratic experiment for the people of Rivers State, so that the House of Assembly and the governor should moderate their powers and understand the limit and spheres of their constitutional responsibilities in a way that will not lead to friction.
All right, Senior Advocate, I think there's something the Constitution is very clear about, and that is there is no such thing as a sole administrator. Section 1 is clear how Nigeria can be governed. I said that to say, what would you make of all the decisions taken by sole administrator or administrator, as they call him, Iboka Tebas, in the eyes of the law? If my enlightened opinion to say there is no such thing, looked at the law, I don't know where it doesn't exist, and then he took action, binding action. Statutory boards were formed, conducted local government elections, swore in chairmen, something an aberration in the eyes of our law. So because the foundation is faulty, it makes everything cascading down quite difficult to make sense of. What happens to all of his actions in the eyes of the law? Because that's a major landmine that this governor and these people in the House of Assembly are going to face.
Well, thank you. This was the reason why I said all eyes are on the judiciary in respect of developments in Rivers State, not to sweep those cases and make them render them academic. You know, this event has produced various contentions. If you read the speech of the president or the statement of the president yesterday, he labored so much to justify the circumstances leading to the declaration of state of emergency. So that is the view of the executive. Whereas many of us, with all due respect, looking at the fact that the Constitution says no state of Nigeria, no part of this federation shall be governed in any manner that is inconsistent with the Constitution. We then posit that since the Constitution did not make room for the appointment of a sole administrator, it will seem that that appointment, I mean, in the eye of the law, is illegal. But those contentions are now placed before the court. So for us to know which is the true position of the law between the contending arguments, it's important that the court must speak and guide us and give definitive pronouncement. Now, concerning the actions of the sole administrator, I mean, there's a doctrine of preservation, doctrine of regularity, because we talk about the importance of resources within the state, the importance of contracts executed, appointments made. So it will be for the judiciary to examine if the foundation of a thing is questionable. Subsequently, all that may have been built on it would then have to collapse, because you can't build something on nothing and expect it to stand. And that's why it's important for me in particular that we must take this as a precedent for the judiciary to speak, so that next time the president will not take this kind of excess of power in the way he has done it, because he's now writing in the statement that, I mean, they should be careful and watch what they do. So it's like waving a sword over River State now to say, look, this thing is still hanging. If you don't play according to the rules, we can come back. So that's why I said that those cases are not academic. And for the judiciary to save our constitution, to save our democracy by making definitive pronouncement on those cases.
It's interesting, Senior Advocate. So let's even expand this even further as far as the conversation is concerned. And that has to do with the conduct of the local government election, which is more like part of the sub you've answered, because there was also contention as to whether it did follow the Electoral Act. It was in violation of the Electoral. Let's put it as clearly as it could be, because even the INEC chairman talked about the timing, but their argument is to the fact that it's a continuum. The election was supposed to have been held, but it didn't hold because of all the crisis, and then somehow they were able to hold it just before the emergency rule ended. But I'm bringing that in because there is another level of government at the local government level, which is also a part of the contention we're looking at. So how far-reaching can that go as well?
Well, the way I take the issue of local government election in Rivers State is, like, for me, a fait accompli. It was like a major issue for declaration of state of emergency. It was like, take the grassroots, establish yourself properly, and then allow the governor to be floating, which is exactly what we seem to see now. If you look at the scenario in Rivers State now, the local government structure is not within the purview of His Excellency. The House of Assembly is obviously not in tandem with the executive. So that's why I said the other time that the governor is floating. The Governor Siminalayi Fubara, all eyes are on him. It's like somebody carrying a crate of eggs. He has to work it in such a way that, I mean, he will have to achieve stability in Rivers State. Those chairmen have been elected. They have been sworn in. Certificates of return have been issued to them. They have resumed. So it's only if the judiciary determines otherwise before any other step can be taken to affect their tenure. As it were, now, he has to work with them. He has to find a way to navigate this difficult terrain in the interest of the people of Rivers State. And I keep emphasizing, in the interest of the people of Rivers State. Because one way or the other, the sole administrator, I mean, in spite of the challenges of his appointment, the challenges of taking unilateral decisions, for 6 months, I mean, there was relative peace within that institution, within that state, rather. If that could be done by an individual, there's no reason why the person who has the genuine mandate, who has the vote of the people, should not work with the people, work with the elders, work with the institutions, work with organized civil society and all people of Rivers State to achieve peace and progress for that state. So until there's a declaration from the court, it's difficult to postulate on the local government election and the purported election and appointment of those officers. For now, the governor has to work with them, unless there's a judicial determination to the contrary.
As we coast home now, sir, I can't seem to get it off of my mind that there's a key dramatis personae in the conflict in Rivers State who was curiously not mentioned in Mr. President's speech, announcing the return of democratic institutions to Rivers and, of course, justifying it. I wonder if we should, take this as, just another part of the speech, or, we should be interrogating it as well, particularly if we consider what Rivers State will look like going forward in terms of the conduct of relations between Governor Sim Fubara's government and the State Assembly.
Honestly, Bukola, I thought that one of the lessons from this experience is for us to speak directly to the Honorable Minister for the Federal Capital Territory, the former governor of Rivers State, Mr. Nyesom Wike. His Excellency should pursue legacy. He should pursue history. Because he has all the templates to turn that state to a golden port. He has the influence, he has the experience, and has all that it takes to make Rivers an example of progress and development. I do not think it will be proper every time that it's only when there's need to assert power, to assert influence, and then we only hear him concerning controversies. I appreciate his point of view that he established this structure, he produced the structure, but honestly, from the eye of the law, the person in charge of Rivers State is Governor Similaya Fubara. However, the circumstances may be that produced him, power is in his hand, and he should be allowed to govern. That's why I wanted to speak to His Excellency, the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, to pursue history and legacy, and be able to use this opportunity to rally around the people of Rivers State and at least develop a roadmap that will ensure that between now and 2027, there should be no further conflict between the gladiators in Rivers State. Because whether he likes it or not, everybody will be pointing fingers to him. And I think he owes history that responsibility to mediate and settle the risks once and for all.
All right, Senior Advocate, there's a lot to unpack from the situation in Rivers State, but we have to thank you so much. We'll see how the courts rule, and this is certainly not the end to the conversation. We're speaking with Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Adegboruwa. Thank you for your time. Wish you all the best.
Thank you very much.